I still remember the way the champagne glass slipped from my hand that day. The sound of it shattering on the marble floor wasn't half as deafening as the words that caused it.
6 words. He married your sister. Your twin.
For a split second, I didn't believe it.
I couldn't.
I thought my best friend, Lisa, was joking, some sick, tasteless attempt to pull me out of my post-divorce funk. But when I looked up at her face, I saw no humor in her eyes.
Only pity.
And then I saw the photo on her phone. My ex-husband Jonah, standing beside a woman in a white gown, my face on her body, my curls in her veil, my exact birthmark near her collarbone.
But it wasn't me. It was Isabel. My twin sister.
Before I go on, please take a moment to support my channel by subscribing. It means the world to me, and it helps more stories like mine reach people who need to hear them. The story doesn't begin here, not really. It begins 3 years ago, when Jonah and I were still married. We weren't perfect, but we were comfortable.
Safe.
We had a rhythm. The morning coffee routines, the shared Netflix list, the weekend brunches. He made me laugh. God, he could make me laugh even when I didn't want to smile. But somewhere in year 4, things shifted.
He began to pull away. No fights. No infidelity I could see. Just distance. He started working late. He stopped texting back promptly. He stopped looking at me when we talked.
By the time we reached year 5, he was sleeping in the guest room.
I just need space, he'd say. You've become someone else. I thought maybe it was me. That I wasn't enough. That I had changed. The divorce was clean. Mutually filed. Civil. We split the assets. He kept the car. I kept the house.
He walked away with my gratitude for not dragging it through court. He also walked away with my trust. That was until last Saturday, when Lisa showed me that photo. Until I realized that Jonah hadn't just moved on. He'd moved closer than I could have ever imagined.
Isabel and I haven't been close in years. We used to be inseparable growing up.
We shared everything, dresses, diaries, even crushes. But something changed after college. While I focused on writing and working with nonprofits, Isabel became obsessed with influence, Instagram, brand deals, curated lifestyles. We were both ambitious, just in different languages. Still, betrayal never crossed my mind.
Not from her.
The week after I found out, I tried to stay calm. I rehearsed conversations in the mirror.
Maybe it was a mistake.
Maybe Jonah and Isabel reconnected after the divorce. Maybe they truly fell in love. But the timeline didn't match. Their wedding had taken place just 2 months after our divorce finalized. Which meant they had to have been together before. Had it started while we were still married? Had she visited during the holidays just to see him? Had I been the third wheel at my own dinner table?
I needed answers. I didn't confront them right away.
Instead, I went down a rabbit hole.
Social media. Reverse image searches.
Obsessively checking old photos for any sign, any glance between them I had missed.
And I found it. Christmas. 2 years ago.
Isabel's hand on Jonah's shoulder, his eyes not on the camera but on her.
A subtle smile. My stomach turned. That night, I couldn't sleep.
My chest felt tight, like betrayal was something physical pressing into me. I stared at the ceiling and asked the question I'd been avoiding.
Why her?
Was it because we looked alike and I was the broken version?
The duller copy?
Did he trade me in for a shinier, more agreeable version of me? Or was it deeper? Was this about control, about power? About getting the last laugh? When I finally confronted Isabel, I didn't yell.
I didn't scream. I wanted clarity, not chaos. We met at our childhood park.
She wore a white trench coat like she was ready for a photo shoot.
I wore sweats and anger. I know, I said. She blinked. Know what?
Don't insult me, Izzy.
A long pause. Then she sighed.
I didn't mean for it to happen. My laugh came out bitter.
Of course not.
Just like Jonah didn't mean to text you at 2 a.m. on Christmas Eve while I was asleep next to him.
She looked down at her hands. We didn't plan it. He was just there when you weren't.
And that made it okay?
No, she said quietly. It made it easy.
That's the line that haunted me. It made it easy. Like I was the complicated sister. The one with too many feelings, too many boundaries. Like love should be effortless, not earned. I walked away that day knowing I would never look at either of them the same again. But here's the twist neither of them saw coming. I had my own plans. Because while Jonah and Isabel were playing house, I had been building something else, a memoir. I had been journaling every detail, every emotion, every moment of betrayal. Not for revenge, but for survival. And maybe, for justice. In the next chapter, I'll tell you how I turned their perfect life into the story that would change mine, how I took back my power without ever raising my voice, and how their wedding became the launching point for my biggest triumph. Because if there's one thing I've learned from being stabbed in the back by someone who shares your face, it's this. The sharpest revenge doesn't always leave scars. Sometimes, it just rewrites the story. I didn't cry again after that meeting with Isabel. Maybe I should have. Maybe I was supposed to. But something in me had calcified, hardened beyond grief. I didn't want pity. I didn't even want revenge. I wanted clarity, control over a story that had been spinning behind my back for years. And strangely, writing gave me that. I'd been journaling since the divorce, but now I began documenting everything with ruthless detail. The subtle red flags I'd ignored. The passive-aggressive comments from Isabel. Jonah's subtle changes, his cologne switch, his gym obsession, the way he started humming in the shower again like he used to when we were dating. I filled notebooks like wildfire. And somewhere between the heartbreak and the healing, I realized, this wasn't just journaling anymore. It was a book. You see, I'd always dreamed of publishing. I had a degree in creative writing and 1,000 drafts of novels collecting dust on my hard drive. But life, work, and love always came first. Until now. Now, I had something people would want to read. Something real. And when I looked at my story, not just the betrayal, but the complex sibling dynamic, the psychological warfare, the silent competitions we'd endured since childhood, I knew it could resonate. So I stopped waiting for permission. I started structuring chapters. I called it, My Mirror, My Rival. Meanwhile, Jonah and Isabel began flaunting their newlywed glow on social media. Lavish trips. Silly couple challenges. Matching robes. Her captions were always sweet, nauseatingly so. Marrying my best friend was the easiest yes. Grateful to be Mrs. Shaw. Again. Again. She kept my last name. The audacity. They even moved into a condo just 10 blocks from mine, same neighborhood, same grocery store, same Pilates studio. It felt deliberate. One day, I passed them on the street. She held his arm like a trophy. He glanced at me like I was a ghost. And just like that, my doubt vanished. This wasn't love. This was conquest. But they didn't know who they were dealing with. I hired a literary coach. Took a 6-week course on publishing proposals. Worked after hours, slept in 4-hour shifts, rewrote until my fingers cramped. My story began to take shape, not as a sob fest, but as a compelling account of identity theft in the emotional sense. What it means to lose not only your partner, but your reflection. Your past. Your name. By spring, I had a finished manuscript. I submitted to 3 publishers. 2 rejected me. The third? They called within 48 hours. A week later, I sat in a conference room at Brighton Press across from a woman named Harper Glick, a senior editor with red lipstick, diamond rings, and eyes that saw through BS in seconds. I read your manuscript twice, she said, and I've already pitched it at our Monday meeting. I blinked. You pitched it? We want it, Amelia, but not just as a book. I leaned in. Harper smiled. We're talking rights. Podcast. Streaming. Film. I froze. Film? That night, I sat alone in my apartment, the offer letter printed on heavy stock paper in my lap. It felt surreal. They didn't just want to publish my pain. They wanted to project it. And in that moment, I realized something huge. They had tried to erase me. But now my voice would echo louder than either of them could contain. I kept everything quiet, of course. Not out of kindness, but strategy. I wanted them to find out naturally. To feel it crash over them, uninvited. And fate delivered. It was during an influencer retreat in Napa Valley. Isabel's Instagram was flooded with selfies in vineyards, wearing floppy hats and sipping rose, that one of her friends tagged her in a post.
A screenshot of my book cover, with the caption, "Can't wait for this juicy memoir to drop." Written by the Amelia Shaw. You know the story. She read it.
And I know this because 5 minutes later, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize.
I picked up. Silence. Then Isabel's voice, tight, trembling. "You published it?" "Yes," I said calmly. "You wrote about us?" "I wrote about me." "You're exploiting your own family." "No," I said. "I'm telling the truth.
And that's something you've avoided your whole life."
She hung up. Jonah called a day later. I didn't answer. He sent a text. "We need to talk. Please." I ignored it. He followed up with an email. "You've made your point. Let's be adults about this." That made me laugh. Adults?
He faked love, she faked loyalty, and I'm the one who needs to be adult about it? 2 weeks before publication, Brighton Press released a teaser trailer for the book.
A minimalist video. Black screen. Soft piano music. My voice narrating.
When the man I loved married my twin, it wasn't just betrayal, it was identity theft.
This is not a love story. This is a survival guide. It went viral in 3 hours. My DMs exploded. Women from everywhere reached out. This happened to me. My sister dated my fiancé. I feel seen.
And just like that, my pain had purpose. Isabel, of course, went on damage control.
She posted a TikTok. Sisters fight. Mistakes happen. But making money off of pain? That's not growth. That's exploitation. She turned off comments after 20 minutes. Jonah posted nothing. Classic. But I wasn't worried about them. I was focused on what came next. At the book launch party, I wore white. Not to mock her wedding dress. To reclaim it.
My name was projected behind me in gold letters, Amelia Shaw, author, speaker, survivor. And as I stood there, champagne in hand, surrounded by a room full of people who weren't clapping out of pity but respect, I realized something powerful.
I hadn't lost a sister or a husband. I had shed 2 masks. And found myself. Fame comes in strange shapes.
One day you're folding laundry with reruns of Grey's Anatomy in the background, and the next, you're in a back room of a podcast studio being powdered by a makeup artist named Lilac while a producer whispers, "This one's going viral."
My book, my mirror, my rival, hadn't just launched, it detonated. It hit #1 in memoirs within 3 days. TikTokers were doing dramatic readings. Therapists were hosting reaction panels.
One influencer called it, the most gaslighty love triangle I've ever read.
And it's real. It was surreal. I didn't feel like a celebrity, I felt like a case study. But I wasn't running from it. Not anymore.
The podcast interview was for She Rose from Ruin, a trending show hosted by Lauren Vale, a former divorce lawyer turned empowerment queen.
"You look too composed for someone who went through all that," she said with a curious grin. I adjusted my white blazer. "That's what healing looks like." Lauren leaned in. "Do you still speak to your sister?" "No." "Do you miss her?" I took a breath.
I miss the version of her I thought existed.
But no, I don't miss the woman who married my husband behind my back. Lauren blinked, clearly impressed. "That's a bar." We laughed, but inside, I was trembling. Not from nerves, but because I knew what was coming next. My publisher had secured rights for an adaptation. Not just a limited series. A film. Streaming platforms were circling. I'd had Zooms with producers, meetings with casting agents. Everyone wanted to know, who would play Amelia and Isabel? It was flattering. Terrifying. A little ironic. My sister wanted the spotlight her whole life. And now, the story she tried to silence was about to be on everyone's screens. One night, after a production meeting in LA, I received a DM. From Isabel. Just her profile photo, now a blurry picture of a beach. Her message was simple. "I saw the podcast clip. Can we talk?" I stared at it for a while. My finger hovered over delete. But curiosity won. "Why?" Her reply came instantly. "Because I'm pregnant." It hit me in the chest. Pregnant. My stomach turned. My breath shortened. I hadn't thought about the future they might build. I'd only been processing the past. She followed up with, "I need to speak to you before this gets worse." Worse? Was she finally realizing the chaos she'd sown? Or was she panicking that a baby would be born into a narrative that already painted her as a villain? I didn't respond that night. But I couldn't sleep. 2 days later, I agreed to meet her. Neutral ground, a botanical garden cafe. She looked different. Softer. Tired. Her belly wasn't showing much, but it was real now. Tangible. She didn't hug me. Thank God. We sat, and silence stretched between us like fog. Finally, she spoke. I didn't plan any of this. I raised a brow. Not even the vows? Her face flushed. I was in love with him. Before or after I married him? She winced. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You lied. You schemed. You smiled at my wedding while plotting your own. Tears welled up in her eyes. I didn't care. She took a shaky breath. I was always in your shadow. There it was. I exhaled. Isabel, there was never a shadow. You made it one. I rooted for you. I defended you. Then why does everyone love you now? I blinked. That's what this is about? Public perception. She clutched her chest. This baby didn't ask for this drama. No, but you chose to sleep with your sister's husband. She began sobbing. It was messy, loud, and frankly manipulative. I didn't budge. I want you to take down the film deal, she finally said through tears. Please, Amelia. Don't do this to my child. My heart panged, but only for the child. You want me to erase my healing, I said slowly, because you're ashamed of what you did? This will follow us forever. No, I said. It will follow you. I've already made peace with it. She stood, napkin clutched in one fist. You're cruel. I stood too, calm and firm. And you're deflecting. But here's the difference. My story may hurt, but it doesn't lie. I walked away before she could respond. That night, Jonah called again. I answered. His voice was low, almost a whisper. You saw her? Yes. She's spiraling. She should be. He sighed. I just want this all to go away. I smiled bitterly. That's the thing about consequences. They don't vanish just because you're tired of them. I never meant for this to happen. Liar, I said simply. And hung up. The film deal closed 2 weeks later. Streaming rights sold for 7 figures. My lawyer called, practically giggling. Amelia, you're not just telling your story, you're changing the way people talk about betrayal. I smiled faintly. Good. Then I turned off my phone. Healing isn't linear. Some days, I felt victorious. Other days, I felt empty. Not because I missed Jonah or Isabel, but because I was still recalibrating who I was without them. That's the trickiest part of betrayal. It warps your sense of self. But slowly, I rebuilt. I started speaking at universities. Led workshops. Got invited to panels about women, resilience, and truth-telling. People didn't just want to read my pain. They wanted to learn from it. And that made everything worth it. At a New York Women in Media gala, I gave a speech. The room went quiet as I walked up, white dress shimmering like defiance. I stood at the podium. My sister once told me I didn't deserve to tell our story. But here's the thing about stories, they belong to those who survive them. And I survived. Applause erupted. People stood. Some even cried. And in that moment, I wasn't just Amelia, the woman betrayed. I was Amelia Shaw, author, speaker, survivor. And nothing could take that from me again. Fame brought invitations. Panels, galas, interviews, doors that had always seemed padlocked suddenly swung open with red carpets and nameplates. But as I moved through this new world of spotlights and applause, I learned something unexpected. You can be celebrated in public and still feel utterly alone. The world adored the story. Brave. Honest. Raw. Strangers on the street stopped me just to say I was inspiring.
But behind every compliment was a reminder. I was no longer just Amelia Shaw. I was the woman whose twin sister married her husband. It became a shadow stitched to my name. And sometimes, it hurt more than the betrayal itself. My therapist, Dr. Kelsey, asked me one afternoon, "Do you feel you've healed?" I stared at her bookshelves. I've learned how to function, how to monetize my pain, how to look powerful in interviews. But healed? I'm not sure what that even means anymore. She nodded. That's honest. Healing isn't a destination. It's a decision you make over and over. I keep making it, I whispered. But some mornings, I wake up angry again. Then you honor it. And you keep going. The film production had started. I had agreed to be a script consultant, not a producer, not an executive, just a consultant. But soon I found myself rewriting dialogue, helping choose wardrobe, coaching the lead actress on my body language and tone. She was sweet, in her mid-30s, and fascinated by how calm I could be while discussing such devastation. I'd be in jail, she joked one day. I smiled. Some nights I still rehearse imaginary court monologues. We both laughed. But it was only half a joke. Meanwhile, Isabel had gone quiet again. I knew from the tabloids that her pregnancy had become a topic of interest. Photographers captured her exiting maternity boutiques, shielding her face with large sunglasses. Jonah had all but vanished from the public eye. Rumors swirled, he was struggling, he had filed for bankruptcy, he was cheating again. Part of me didn't care. But another part, deep and annoyingly human, worried for the child. They didn't ask for this chaos. One evening, I received a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. It's about the baby. Jay." I froze. Jay could only be Jonah. I debated for hours. Then I replied. 1 hour. Public place. No drama. He suggested a wine bar near the old townhouse we used to share. The moment I walked in, I regretted it. Too many memories. Too much white marble and curated playlists we used to laugh over. Jonah looked different, thinner, stressed, and noticeably grayer. "You look powerful," he said. "You look exhausted." We sat. "I'm not here to reopen anything," he began. "I know I don't deserve even a sliver of your time. But Isabel, she's not doing well." I folded my arms. Define not doing well. She's been having panic attacks. She's withdrawn. She regrets everything. Convenient timing. He looked pained. "This isn't about us. It's about the baby." I leaned in. "The baby you created while lying to me? The baby you made with my sister while attending marriage counseling with me?" He dropped his gaze. "I'm asking," he whispered, "if you'd consider removing the baby's name from the screenplay." That stopped me cold. "What name?" I asked sharply. He hesitated. "Well, there's a working draft. The baby's name is Claire." Claire. The name we had picked together. Years ago. In a journal. I inhaled slowly. So she stole my husband, my life, and the baby name we dreamed of? "I didn't know," he mumbled. I stood up. "Of course you didn't. Because you never paid attention to anything that didn't benefit you." His eyes pleaded. "Please don't ruin this child's life. She doesn't deserve it." "And neither did I," I snapped. I walked out. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I packed away the baby journal I had once clutched during fertility appointments. I burned the ultrasound printouts we never got to use. I deleted every name I had once loved. Because they didn't belong to me anymore. And that was okay. I was no longer trying to reclaim what I lost. I was building something new. The movie wrapped filming. The final scene mirrored my real life, the twin confrontation, the betrayal, the walkout. But the last few lines were mine, rewritten without permission, dropped into the script by a sly screenwriter who said, "It just felt right." The actress, playing me, stood before the sister and said, "You may look like me, but you'll never be me. Because I don't steal. I survive." When I watched the final cut, I cried for the first time in months. Not because it hurt, but because it felt like freedom. Later that year, the premiere was held in New York. I wore a white silk gown.
No date. No entourage. Just me and the truth I'd carried all this way. A journalist asked, "If Isabel shows up tonight, what will you do?" I smiled. "Take a bow. The villain never ruins the standing ovation." The crowd laughed. But I meant every word. After the screening, people approached me with tears in their eyes. One woman said, "My sister did the same. And I thought I was crazy." Another whispered, "You gave us all permission to speak." But the moment that stays with me forever came later that night. A 17-year-old girl handed me a letter outside the venue. I watched with my mom. She's been in an abusive marriage for 10 years. Tonight, after the film, she said she's leaving him. The girl hugged me. "You didn't just tell your story. You helped us rewrite ours." I clutched that letter like a lifeline. Because maybe I didn't get the family I deserved. Maybe I didn't get the love I was promised. But I got this. Truth. Impact. Peace. And that was more than enough. When the film premiered on streaming platforms, the viewership exploded. Within 48 hours, it became the most watched original drama of the year. My inbox was flooded with thousands of messages, from women in small towns, from men too ashamed to tell their stories until now, from strangers who saw themselves reflected in my pain. It wasn't just a story anymore. It was a movement. And I was its accidental leader. The press wanted me everywhere. Talk shows, podcasts, exclusive interviews. They all wanted the woman who had turned betrayal into gold. But I was tired of being seen as the one who got cheated on. I wanted to pivot, not to forget, but to evolve. So I launched a foundation. Reflected Voices, a non-profit dedicated to helping women rebuild after betrayal, especially in complex family dynamics. Legal support, counseling scholarships, career mentoring. The first event sold out within 3 hours. Pain had given me a platform. Now I was going to use it for power. Then the gossip blogs dropped a bomb. Isabel Shaw files for divorce from Jonah Cade amid cheating allegations. I stared at the headline for a long moment, barely blinking. It wasn't even shock, more like confirmation of something I'd already known deep down. Once a liar, always a liar. Only this time, my sister got burned too. I received a letter in the mail a week later. Handwritten. No return address. You win. I broke us. I should have known it would end like this. I don't want your forgiveness. Just peace. Isabel. No apology. No ownership. Just surrender. I placed the letter in my desk drawer without reading it twice. Some words don't need reprocessing. They just need to be put away. The final push in my transformation came unexpectedly. A high-profile law firm invited me to speak at their annual empowerment summit. One of their junior partners had been the silent legal mind behind my film's IP protections. Turns out, she had once been pushed out of a job by a cousin who stole her designs. She never spoke of it publicly, until now. The ripple effect of my story was reaching places I never imagined. As I stepped on stage, I saw faces of every age, race, background. Women in tailored suits, mothers with tired eyes, teenagers clutching notebooks like lifelines. All waiting. I began, some betrayals don't leave bruises. They leave echoes. And those echoes shape how we walk into every room after. The standing ovation wasn't just for me. It was for all of us. Weeks later, I finally ran into Isabel again. Not in some dramatic parking lot confrontation. Not at a courthouse. But in a quiet park, of all places. I had taken a break from city chaos and wandered into a peaceful corner with a book. And there she was, pushing a stroller. Alone. We locked eyes. For a second, everything paused. I could feel my heartbeat in my teeth. But then she offered a tiny, awkward nod. And I nodded back. Not out of obligation. Not out of weakness. But because I'd already won. She sat near the fountain while her baby, my niece, slept. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. That silence said everything. She was exhausted. Weathered. Shrinking into herself in a way I no longer recognized. I stayed just long enough to know I didn't envy her anymore. And then I left. That evening, I sat on my rooftop with a glass of wine, wrapped in a thick sweater, watching the city glow.
I thought about what had been stolen from me: trust, time, family. But then I thought about what I had built in its place. A career, a movement, a community, and most of all, a life that was mine and mine alone. Jonah called once. I didn't answer. His voicemail was only 6 seconds. I ruined everything. I'm sorry. I wish you happiness. I deleted it. Some closures aren't conversations. They're decisions. That fall, Reflected Voices expanded to 5 cities. I started consulting on a second film project, fictional this time, but loosely inspired by the emails we had received from women whose families turned on them. I wanted their voices to be immortalized too. And then, one cold October morning, I walked into my office and found a package. No sender. Inside, a gold bracelet. The one Isabel and I wore as kids. Half a heart. With a note. For the part of you I'll never be able to replace. Take care of her. I held it for a moment. Then slid it into a box labeled memories I no longer need to unpack. Because I wasn't her anymore. I wasn't the woman who cried in the shower when Jonah didn't come home. I wasn't the sister who begged to be chosen. I wasn't a secret. A victim. A headline. I was Amelia Shaw. And I had outgrown the betrayal. Some endings don't arrive with fireworks. They arrive with clarity. Quiet, steady, unshakable clarity. 6 months after the film's release, I was back in New York, not for a premiere or a gala, but to sign a lease. A 3-bedroom loft in Soho. Exposed brick. Floor-to-ceiling windows. A place with enough space for solitude, and enough light for hope. I had never lived alone. Not really. But I was finally ready. The day I moved in, I sat on the hardwood floor of the empty living room and looked out at the city. No furniture. No noise. Just me. Me without Jonah. Without Isabel. Without the old version of Amelia who kept trying to prove she was enough. That woman had finally been laid to rest. The Forbes list came out 2 weeks later. 30 under 30 media and impact. There was my name. Amelia Shaw, 29, founder of Reflected Voices, screenwriter, advocate. I laughed out loud when I saw it. Not because I was surprised, but because I remembered a dinner conversation 2 years prior, Jonah joking that lists like that were reserved for actual entrepreneurs, not people who cry and post it. And now? Now I was the list. Invitations poured in. Panels in Paris. Documentaries in development. Think pieces in the New York Times. People wanted more of me. But I had learned to be selective. I accepted the honor. Did one tasteful cover shoot. Donated half the licensing fee to single mothers who had fled abusive homes. And then, I disappeared for a while. Because no matter how shiny the platform, I refused to let visibility become a substitute for healing. I traveled. 3 weeks in Bali with no itinerary. A silent retreat in New Zealand. Then, unexpectedly, Copenhagen, where I fell in love. Not with a man. With the peace. With the absence of needing to explain myself. One night in a small Copenhagen cafe, an older woman named Linnea struck up a conversation with me after noticing my accent. You're American? I smiled. Is it that obvious? You carry both urgency and exhaustion in your posture. It's how I spotted you. We talked for hours. She had lived 3 lives in her 70 years, photographer, mother, activist. At the end of the evening, she said, "You remind me of someone I used to be." Is that a good thing? I asked. She grinned. It means you're still becoming. I returned to New York in the spring. The foundation had doubled in size. A major studio had optioned the rights for a spin-off based on other real stories shared through our platform. And I'd received an email from a publisher. Your voice is needed in memoir form. Let's give it the permanence it deserves. At first, I hesitated. The story had already lived on screens, on stages, in hearts. Did it need another format? But something inside me whispered, write the final chapter in your own hand. So I did. The book was titled Split Reflections, a memoir of betrayal, identity, and becoming whole. And on page 1 I wrote, this isn't a story about a man or a marriage. It's about a mirror. A mirror held between 2 identical women. and the journey of stepping away from its reflection. To finally see myself, not as a twin, not as a wife, but as me. 1 month before the book launch, I received another package. This time with a return address. Isabel. Inside, a simple photo. Us as toddlers, in a sandbox, building a castle. On the back, her handwriting. We broke it, didn't we? But I hope you built something better. No letter. No signature. But I understood. It was her version of peace. I didn't reply. Not out of cruelty, but because I no longer needed the loop to close with her. Closure wasn't about what she gave me. It was about what I reclaimed. The day the book hit shelves, I walked into a small bookstore in Brooklyn. A girl around 20 was holding a copy, flipping to the middle. She had tears in her eyes. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. She saw me. I nodded. She clutched the book to her chest like it had just handed her a lifeline. And I realized. The betrayal that nearly destroyed me had birthed something bigger than redemption. It had become permission. Permission for others to name their pain. To stand up. To leave. To build. To become. One afternoon, a man sat beside me in Central Park. We started talking. Nothing flirtatious. Just real. He was widowed. 2 kids. A civil engineer. Calm. Grounded. He didn't ask about Jonah. He didn't mention the film. He only said, "You seem like someone who's done the work." And I smiled. Because I had. In the end, I never got the apology I thought I needed. Jonah remarried quickly, again. Isabel moved to a different state. We don't speak. The family remains fractured. But I am not broken. I no longer need to be chosen. Because I chose myself. And I built something eternal out of what was meant to destroy me. My name is Amelia Shaw. I am not just the twin. I am not just the ex-wife. I am not a headline. I am a woman who survived betrayal and became art. And now, others survive too, because I spoke.